Okay, we're gonna get started at 6 o'clock. Welcome everyone to our November 5 Points meeting. I'm Andrew Bing. I facilitate the 5 Point working group meetings, and it's good to see everyone here. As we always do with all of our meetings, we're going to start with our safety update and briefing. So I'm going to turn it over to Austin, who is going to lead us through that, and then I'll come back and formally kick off the meeting. Austin.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. We start all of our presentations with our mission statement, which, as you all know by now, is excellence in transportation, every trip, every move, every dollar, and every want. We also show the latest traffic fatality numbers. So right now we are at 99 fatalities year to date, which is a decline of about 16% from where we were at this time last year. So trending in the right direction, but the goal is always zero, right? So we're always trying to get those numbers down as low as possible. And you see we've had some picks up in some categories to make it past just one, right? So really working on understanding where we can improve and make changes to all those numbers down to green all across the board. You've also seen we've been playing this for some time now since the spring. The formal safe system approach policy that we've adopted and been implementing more in our projects and everything that the department does. So on the side of the circle, you'll see the principles of the policy. And then the center of the circle, the slice of the pie, you'll see the outcomes of the elements, right? So safer vehicles, safer speed, safer use, safer roads, post-crash care, and safer people. All these are really supposed to show part of achieving this move, right? There are multiple components, there are multiple partners involved in how we get there, right? So groups like this group, the working group, are really essential, right? We see a lot of partners in how our land agencies or state police, right? To help us achieve all of these goals. So you'll see this in everything we're doing and trying to make it more prominent and just demonstrate exactly how this is part of the work that we're doing today. For our agenda, and I'll turn it back over to Andrew in a second. We'll go through just some meeting basics. We'll turn it over to Secretary John Hastings and County Administrator Todd Lawson for some remarks. We'll give a presentation on the Sussex County Transportation Operations Management Plan of the TOMP that was recently completed. We will give some project development staff construction updates, do a review of the phase 2 implementation status, and then move into a public comment period. And back over to Andrew. Great, thanks.
Thanks, Austin. So again, we are in a hybrid meeting. So as you all remember, we have our friendly owl in front of us. It does a very good job of picking up what we say, but it still is helpful if you can project as best you can. But I don't have any working groups on virtually. Do we have working groups or just public?
We have Councilman Greenbaum.
Okay, great. So, but if you would like to make a comment, Councilwoman, and if any other of our working members join online, just raise your hand on the team setting there, and we'll get to you as quickly as we can. But we thank you for joining us virtually. So in terms of we'll go and do introductions for our working group members. In terms of what's in your notebook, we do have the agenda. We have the full presentation. We have our draft minutes from our April 28th, 2025 working group meeting. We do have the letter that was sent out to all of the working group members from Secretary Hastings and County Administrator Lawson, as well as our updated implementation plan. And with that, we'll just go to approval of the April 28th, 2025 meeting minutes. Does anyone have a motion for me?
So moved.
I saw Russ, Senator Huxtable raise his hand. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I saw Glenn Marshall over there. Any comments or questions? Anyone have any issues with that? Right. I'm not seeing any hands. So with that, all in favor of approving the minutes from our April 28th, 2025 meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Anyone abstaining? Okay, great. Thanks for letting us get through that quickly. So before I go to our remarks from the Secretary and the County Administrator, I do want everyone just to go, we'll start with you, Todd. You'll get to introduce yourself and then come up. But let's go around the room and just make sure everyone knows who we have here.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Todd Lawson, County Administrator.
John Riley, Sussex County Council, 5th District.
Pete Matson, representing St. Jude's.
Glenn Marshall, Sussex County EMS Special Operations.
DJ Hughes, technical advisor.
Scott Collins, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Mike Tyler, Delaware Bicycle Council.
Bob Fisher, retired system engineer at Del Dot volunteer.
Bill Davis, Sussex County Association of Realtors.
Russ Huxtable, State Senate, 6th District.
Mary Roth, Delaware Greenways, Historic Lewes Byway.
Hi, everybody. Scott Thomas, Southern Delaware. EDAC.
Stephanie Johnson, Director of Planning and Delaware.
And Councilman Greenbaum, do you want to come on and just say a quick hi?
Hi, Jane Grunbaum here. Thank you.
So we are going to go on to our first agenda item. We're going to have Secretary Hastings and County Administrator Lawson make some remarks. It was about 10 years ago that then Secretary Cohen and Todd Lawson, we were at the Senior Center over in Lewes, and we started this meeting, and they came up and kind of gave us our marching orders for this process. So it's only fitting that we hear from the Secretary and County Administrator now as we kind of wrap up and move to a different phase of this. So I see them finger pointing, so I'll just keep talking until one of them decides to take the lead here now.
I'm gonna present after, so you start. You talk first. I'm stand with you.
Did you write things down?
Here. It'll be.
I was thinking there's got to be something to say that I was here in the beginning and I was here in the end. 10 years worth of Del Dot 5 Points County work together. So I guess I'm a glutton for punishment or something like that. But I wanted to say to the members here on this commission and then the ones that preceded, including our county officials that were here from the beginning that agreed to do this. Collaborate with Del Dot and do something that had never been done before. Just wanted to thank them and thank you all for the hours that we've spent here at the school on 24, at the Cheer Senior Center, deliberating and working through this, and in the lobby gymnasium over there when we roll out our annual update. I think it's probably one of the best well-attended meetings that Del Dot and the county have when we would give our updates on these projects. But I also want to thank Del Dot. Your leadership, your predecessor's leadership in working with us, trying to build that relationship together. Land use and the roads go hand in hand, as we know, and probably need to continue that conversation so we can collaborate and make these improvements continue. So thank you for everything that you've done to build this relationship and work through these projects. And the last thing I would leave the public with is to stay engaged. This is a great forum. I think we learned a lot through this forum of soliciting public input and the folks that use the roads and the system on a day-to-day basis. There's room for improvement and we need to continue to collaborate to see that improvement. So just a great amount of thanks and appreciation for everything.
Thank you, Todd. I want to start by thanking the county for being our partner in this. It was a different approach, right? We didn't have a specific project in mind. It was just, we have this area and there's a lot of needs, and let's get the community together in, a diverse part of the community and figure out what those recommendations are. And so be able to come up with 78 recommendations and be able to make a lot of action on them it has been a huge effort, and I'm just grateful for our partnership. I'm grateful for all of the working group members present and past. We've had changes along the way, but taking time out of your busy schedules to meet several times a year, to attend the public workshops, to provide feedback and insight, to ask hard questions, all of those things have been really important. And when Todd and I, talked about it being time to kind of wind this down, we wanted to make it clear that we're not done, right? We haven't done all of the things. There are still projects in the pipeline. There are still even studies that we need to do. But we felt like it was best to use the resources we have to kind of push those things further and still keep you engaged, but in a different way. And so we'd love to, have a conversation, probably closer to the end of the meeting to talk about ways to stay engaged. There's so many things that the department does, there's so many things that the county does, that you have opportunities to stay connected and to be those resources. I can't remember, I talked to somebody and they said, well, how am I going to get the information to be able to share with my community? I was talking about kind of winding down the working group. And so we want to find ways to do that. That's really important to us. This has been one of the longest standing, I would say, working groups that the department has had, and it's been super fruitful. And so again, grateful to all of you for being here, those who have participated in the past, to our DelDOT team. This takes a lot of work and our consultant partners to put on these types of meetings, and we've evolved along the way, right? 2017, when we started, we weren't doing virtual, you know, and so being able to put this on is a big deal. And so I thank each of you for the work you've done as well. Okay. All right. So segueing into, I wanted to come to give a presentation on the capital transportation program. Typically, I would start my presentation off with the slides that Austin went through related to emission statement and safety. So I did not put those in because I knew they'd already be in there, but I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the tragedy that happened on Friday. So we had a double fatal on Route 1. And actually at the almost same exact time, we had a fatality on Route 24, which most people don't know about because there was so much recognition, if you will, of the crash on Route 1. And so what I want to say about it is it's tragic. We've been making improvements along the corridor. We had actually just implemented our new restrictions to crossovers. It was not related to that. There was some striping activity going just south of there, and so there was some queuing. And for reasons unknown to us at this time, because it's still under investigation, the truck didn't slow down and rear-ended the vehicle, the last vehicle in the queue at likely full speed. And so it's devastating. We showed you the 99 number. What folks don't probably know is every time there's a fatal or serious injury on our system, our leadership team gets an email. And when we have a fatal crash, we actually then get further details after the fact. So I know every one of those 99 and what road it happened on and what time of day and what the circumstances were. And it weighs heavy on us. We want everyone to go home. When Austin talked about our goal being 0, that is true. And that's why we've adopted the safe system approach. And that's why we're doing all the things that we're doing that go above and beyond, in a lot of cases, what's required from a design standpoint. And so I want to take a moment to acknowledge all 99 people who have lost their lives on our roads throughout the year. Before September, I was very hopeful that we would be below 100 this year because we were trending almost 30% down year over year. And we had a real spike in September, and it's kind of continued in different places throughout the state. So it's not just our highways, it's our back roads. It's not just people in vehicles, it's people on motorcycles and pedestrians and cyclists and scooters. And so the task is big. We can't get to 0 alone. It takes all of the different pieces. We call it the 4 E's: engineering, education, enforcement, and emergency services. That's why we partner with so many people. That's why we're putting so many investments into safety. And it's hard work. And we've got some new things that we've tried, the highway safety unit with Delaware State Police, to be able to get additional, specifically just traffic education and enforcement out on the roads. And we paid for that as a department. That's how important it is. We've done things, and we're going to be bringing more median barrier down Route 1. We've started kind of at the north end and are working our way south. None of that is required, right? But when you saw that redundancy is crucial, that's why we're doing median barrier. That's why we're trying to remove some of the at grade intersections, because we know that that's the next step. So that's what we did at, or in the process of doing at 1 and 16. That's what we've done on the 113 corridor at Route 20. And so we have plans for a lot of these major corridors, and then we have some planning efforts that we've done for, some of the mid-level, if you will, corridors and some of the locals. And so we continue to do a lot of work in that space, which is what the capital transportation program is all about. Our resources are limited, so we try to assess, risk and figure out where best to put our funding and then execute. And so I just wanted to pause and say those things before I get started with the presentation. So I thought it was important just to level set. I will get to the capital program, I promise, but DelDOT statistics. So we are unlike most DOTs in the country. Most DOTs have around 30% of the public road network under their purview. We are just under 90%. So that means we have I-95, Route 1, all the way down to neighborhood streets. tracks are also state maintained. So you can see about 6,000 centerline miles of roadway throughout the state is ours. We have over 1,800 bridges throughout the state. So those are big bridges and they're very small bridges, but, 1,803. We have a ferry, the Woodland Ferry that we operate, not the Cape May Lewes Ferry. We have over 1,200 traffic signals, close to 6,000 streetlights, 400 miles of guardrail, sidewalk, bike paths, dams, fine structures, the buildings that house our teams across the state. We do stormwater management and drainage. So all of these things fall into the bucket of DelDOT that then need to be maintained and taken care of. We also have DMV under us. So DMV is doing about 1.15 million transactions annually. We've got licensed drivers, registered vehicles, you name it. It's funny, you actually have more registered vehicles than population, which is interesting, right? We run the tolling system. So 80 million, that's transactions, that's not dollars. That's the number of transactions that we do in a given year. You can see the utilization on the different. And then we also run transit, statewide, both fixed route and paratransit. And so we do about 5.3 million fixed route trips every year. And you can see the number of assets that we have under there, about 866,000 paratransit trips. Paratransit is door-to-door service for persons with disabilities as well as the elderly. And we run that differently than everyone else in the country. Throughout the rest of the country, what federal transit requires you to do is be within a certain distance of any fixed route service that you have. So if you have service on Route 1, a half mile out, you have to do paratransit. But if you're 3/4 of a mile out, other states don't do paratransit. We do it everywhere. We will pick you up wherever you are and take you wherever you need to go. So that is a great service, but it also is costly to the department. And we also pay for SEPTA service to come to northern Newcastle County, and we operate 3 train stations, and we do own 4 rail cars that SEPTA uses to deliver that service. And lastly, on the DelDOT and DMV side, we have just under 1,900 full-time positions. And then DTC has just under 1,200 full-time positions. Those are your bus drivers, mechanics. Switching gears, so we talked about the roads that we maintain. I think it's important to understand we get a lot of federal funding, right? But it can only be used in certain places. So in Newcastle County, about 75% of the roads are federally eligible and about 57% of the bridges are. It goes down. In Kent County, it's about 40% are federally eligible for roads and 47% of bridges. And then in Sussex County, it's 35% of the roads are federally eligible and about 30% of the bridges. I point this out because if it's not federally eligible, that means we have to use state funding. We cannot use federal funding. So when you look at the state funds that we bring in, we have to allocate a lot of those to things that aren't federally eligible. And that's an important kind of part of the calculus. So how our budget works is we bring in revenue via DMV fees, tolls, and motor fuel tax. We pay our debt service because we sell bonds to be able to do some of the work we do. We pay our DelDOT operating costs for our salaries of our staff, to turn the lights on, to fuel the vehicles, all of those things. We subsidize transit, so anything that they don't bring in revenue-wise, we subsidize them, and it's a heavy subsidy. And then whatever's left over is available for state capital resources. So just a quick little history of our revenue as well as some forecasting that we've done. So we went back to 2020 and projected out to 2032. What you should note here is that we have a modest increase shown for both toll roads as well as DMV revenues, and we show a decline in motor fuel tax. We knew that. That's why we did our revenue package earlier this year, because we saw that motor fuel tax was already on the verge of declining, and it did last year. We brought in a couple $1 million less than the year before, and we anticipate that going down further. So we did implement an alternative fuel vehicle fee to capture some of the revenue related to electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, and non-plug-in hybrids. But this is the trajectory, if you will, of our revenue moving forward. For this year's budget, we are about 1.15 billion in terms of all the different sources of funding that come in. So again, I talked about B&B, tolls, and motor fuel tax. We're also anticipated to use about $375 million in federal funding. You'll see that the fare box revenue, so what we collect from transit fares, is $21 million. And then we have a few smaller revenue sources below, including also our bond proceeds that we plan to use for this year. Of that $1.15 billion, 42% of it will go to our operating costs, so debt service, build-out operating, and DTC. And then what's remaining goes to capital, so $665 million. So again, we have a variety of resources that go into capital, the bond proceeds, federal funds, the state resources that we have available, and then any third-party contributions, typically from if we have a development occurring in an area of where we have a capital project, the developer will typically provide a small contribution based on their amount of traffic going through the intersection or segment of road. For the state funds that are available for capital program, you can just see all of the different things that we need to do with those state funds. So I talked about roads not being eligible for federal funding. So if they're not eligible for federal, we have to use state funding to be able to pay them. We have some safety improvements. While the feds do give us an allotment of funding for safety, it's not enough in our opinion. So we supplement that with state funding. We have individual projects that we do. We have to match our federal funding. So all of those state resources that are left over have to be are used to do a lot of these things on this slide. So when you look at the history of where we've been from 2019 to 2025, our program has varied anywhere from around $528 million to upwards of $700 million for capital. And then moving forward, this fiscal year through 2032, the low that we're looking at is around $530 million, and the high is around $653. And I'll pause here to explain why you see a drop off in 29 through 32. So we are in the last year of what's called either IIJA or bill, depending on what you'd like to call it. That's the federal surface transportation legislation. That was a 5-year package. So this is the last year of it. It will end in September of next year. The Congress is currently working on what the next package will be, and we don't know what it is. We don't know if it will be at the same levels of the historic package that we had for the last 5 years, if it'll be greater or if it'll be less. So we have taken a conservative approach to estimating because we want to make sure that we're not over promising and under delivering. So we have shown federal funding to be cut by about $50 million every year starting in 2029. Because while 26 is when the package runs out, you still have 3 more years to use it. So that's why we still show some high federal numbers through 28. But as of 29, we're showing a cut of $50 million every year. So that's basically cutting $200 million out of our capital program. What we've done is to ensure that we have projects ready to go. We're still funding design work, right? We're still funding right away as it's ready. And so we hope that the federal program will come in at the same levels as now, or maybe even greater, and we will be ready to pivot very quickly. But we wanted to show kind of a realistic version of the capital program so that in the event that it doesn't come in higher, that we're not having to kind of switch gears a ton at the last minute. So as part of the last CTP, the 25 to 30 CTP, that's what we're operating under right now, as well as what's been proposed. So in the fall, we had our CTP hearings. I shouldn't say fall, we're still in the fall, right? In September, we had the FY 27 to 32 hearings. And so starting in 25 to 30, that plan, we started removing right-of-way and construction funding for new projects and projects that were very early on in design. We did that for a variety of reasons. But really, the biggest thing was really to provide realistic costs and schedules for our projects. When a project is brand new, you have no idea what it's going to grow to be going through the design process, right? You can contemplate one version of the project, and by the time we've done a lot of public involvement, it could be completely different. We could scale it up, we could scale it back, right? And so what we were doing is taking a new project or a project early in design and saying, okay, it's gonna take 2 years for design, a year for right of way, a couple years for construction, laying that out, laying all the money out. When we don't know enough about the project to be able to do a schedule or a real budget. And so we started in the 25 to 30 CTP, and we kind of finished it and finalized it in this draft CTP of removing all of the right of way, all of the construction for any projects that weren't at a point where we knew solidly what the scope of work was, what the cost would be from a construction standpoint, how much right of way we need, all of those things. So you'll see in the implementation plan that there are projects that have a PE and don't necessarily have a right of way or construction after them. What our plan is, and so what we've done is set aside funding, which we call the ranked project funding line, where we can draw money down from that fund when the projects are ready. So I'm early on in design, I get to a point where I know exactly what I'm doing. I can tell you that I need this many parcels or I need this many strip takes so I can get a good estimate together. That project is now ready for right of way funding. And we can take that right of way funding out of this pot that shows in the CTP and keep things moving. And then as the right of way process progresses and we're getting to a point where we know that we're very close to probably about 6 months out from advertisement, then we can finalize what our construction estimate is and put that in the CTP and draw down that funding from that line. Our plan is to review the pot, if you will, twice a year in January and July. To be able to make those allocations. So we'll have 2 times a year to be able to do those allocations. We feel like this is the more responsible way to do this. There are a lot of DOTs across the country that do it this way. And they have a much more success at kind of being on time related to their schedules because you've done enough work to actually know what it's going to be. If we, any of the projects that we've done recently, and they've definitely taken longer than we anticipated. A lot of it is the public involvement piece. We are meeting with communities more now than we ever have. And sometimes it takes, and Brian will tell you, it can take 2, 3, 4 meetings to get to consensus, if you will, and being able to move forward. And if you have a lot of communities on a project, that's a lot of time that we're trying to take to make sure that we're at a good place so that as we're going through right of way, that we're not having to kind of backtrack and, oh, we didn't listen enough. And, now this one thing is really important and we've got to go back and, tweak things. So we're trying to get better at the schedules, which means you have to allow for the time to understand what the projects are. And so lastly, the only other thing, and then I'll take some questions. The governor at our request issued executive order number 14, which is the Delaware Sustainable Transportation Funding Task Force. The task force is tasked with a variety of things, but basically looking at the condition, if you will, of the trust fund, looking at trends for revenues, expenditures, and capital needs over the next 20 years. Looking at different funding mechanisms, and there's a variety of different things that DOTs across the country are using, engaging with stakeholders to understand what's important to them, what they value. And then that task force is going to submit a report to the governor and the General Assembly next December. So we had our first meeting in October. We'll be meeting monthly. I'm chairing the group. And it's we're doing hybrid meetings. So if anybody's interested in checking those out, they're posted on our website as well as the public meetings calendar. But I thought it was important to kind of share that as well because we need more resources to be able to do all of the projects, right? When you look at the Henlopen TID, I'm throwing out numbers, but $300 million. When you look at all the grade separations that we need to do along the 113 corridor, it was $500 million. It's probably way more than that now. All the work that remains on the Route 1 corridor, contemplating all of the things in between, the coastal corridor study and what it comes out with. And that's just in Sussex County. We have a lot of needs in Kent and Newcastle too. And so we've got to figure out a way to get more resources to be able to deliver, especially on these larger projects that take a lot of funds to be able to deliver. So with that, I'll pause to see if there are questions.
At the macro level, I'm not making predictions, but I see the possibility of a cutback or lengthening the schedule for the EV infrastructure build out for in Delaware. And if my recollection was that was mostly federal funding you were using. So if that happens, that won't make any funds miraculously appear that you can reprogram from EV infrastructure to more near-term current needs. Is that correct? So you don't see the uncertainty of what the schedule for EV infrastructure build out maybe being in the next 10 years, having much of a significant impact on your overall budgeting?
No, so the current transportation legislation that we're operating under, we are getting all of those funds right through FY 26. So there hasn't been a reallocation of that funding to do anything else. So we are still in the process of doing. We're basically finished our first phase, if you will, of the alternative fuel corridors. And so once we're done with that, we're ready to do an RFP to kind of take it down to the community level. We have some state resources that we've also kind of paired with that. Not sure with the next bill we'll have, it may not have any funds for that type of infrastructure, and so we'll have to look and see what the priorities are throughout the state. I think we're still seeing people buying EVs, so that hasn't declined. And so we still need to make sure that there are resources to be able to fuel those.
You did hear that Ford stopped building their Ford Lightning F-150 electric trucks, at least for some period of time, but that's just Ford. But they were probably the biggest proponent of going all EV until they made that decision. So who knows? Thank you. That was a great answer.
Any other questions? Yeah, no. I mean, if you don't mind, just say your name again, we're hybrid, just so people know who's making a comment or asking a question.
Mary Roth. Will you be revisiting the way that you rank projects in the CTP?
So we just actually did that. We went through and the COT, was it the summer? February. Took a fresh look at everything, really made adjustments to the percentages, but also some tweaks to the type of data that we use. I think there's still more work to do in that space. I think we all do. But for right now, that was kind of the latest update that we've done.
So they'll remain as they are right now.
Questions?
I just have one question, Scott.
Mike Tyler.
Mike Tyler, with Delaware Bicycle Council. What makes a bridge or a road not eligible for federal funding?
Yes. So for roads, it's based on the functional classification and whether it's on what's called the National Highway System. So there are different types of roads. So if you think about federal funding, they don't necessarily care about like a back road, right? Like they care about being able to move between state to state, right? So the higher type roads are what make them eligible as a road. For bridges, there are specific sizes. So there are, if it's, I'm going to probably get it wrong because I don't have my notes in front of me, but I think it's like, there's a length along the roadway. So if it's not more than 20 feet, then it's not considered a bridge. And then there's an opening size as well. So those two things combined. So it can be something that carries water under a road, but it's not big enough. We consider it a bridge based on all the different types of calculations we have to do, but it's not necessarily a bridge in the bed size.
One more question. I'm not a happy EV owner because I'm going to be charged $150 for a car that doesn't pollute, doesn't use oil, doesn't put anything on the ground. I think there's a small number of EV cars. It's less than 0.3%. Is that really a smart thing?
We weren't at a point where we could do that, but we know start the process. I anticipate lots of conversations about, are there opportunities to do mileage based? It's just there are two, I'll say, kind of ways to do that. You can come to the DMV every year and report your mileage, right? That's one option. Or you can have a device in your car to track and be able to tell us. The first option means you have to make an extra trip to the DMV, and there's some coding things that we have to do. That's probably that's the lower tech version. Having a device in your car, that's an added cost for us. to bring on a vendor to be able to do that. And some people, we've done pilots over the years. There are many people that don't want a device in their vehicle. And so we weren't at a point to be able to do mileage based when we did the revenue package earlier this year. But we knew, and as I showed, we're already losing motor fuel tax. And so we had to make a move in one direction. So it's not perfect. I would agree with that. I think there's further conversations that can be had.
So will Del Dot's electric buses pay that extra fee?
I don't think we pay ourselves motor fuel tax right now because they would just be me paying it, right?
Because they're heavier and bigger.
They are.
Any other questions? Okay.
I
Well,
apologize. I have to leave.
Yeah.
My daughter has a volleyball banquet, and she had a really great season, so we can celebrate her. But thank you, everybody.
say that, there are a lot of reasons that this process has been successful. Certainly the county's commitment, both from County Administrator Lawson, but the county council members who consistently showed up, all of the leadership at DelDOT and the consultant team, certainly the secretaries at DelDOT, but, every year we count on Chief Engineer Hastings, now Secretary Hastings coming down and, really investing in this process. And it made a huge difference to have that leadership here year after year, providing updates, answering questions, not always easy questions, but still always taking the questions. So thank you for everything throughout this process. And with that, we are going to get a presentation on our Sussex County Transportation Operations Management Plan, the TOP, from Beth Hermansader.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me come and present about the Sussex County TOP. We completed this summer. It hasn't officially been posted online yet because we were working on some compliance issues with the document. We're working as an agency, as a state, to have things be compliant for accessibility so that people that have vision impairment, hearing impairment, those kinds of things can still access the information. So we are working to get it posted this coming week, I believe, because we just recently got the language for the disclaimer to go with the document, as well as our new interactive website. Couple of things we're going to go over. It's going to be brief, I promise. I'm going to go over some analysis and methods and the results, the focus areas that were selected, recommendations, and the next steps. So I want to thank Todd Lawson and several others from the county for reviewing our data and pointing out that it was a little outdated. So we are looking at doing an update to this because it did take us so long to get this particular document together. So for traffic volumes, we utilized 2022 and 2024 for 2022 through 2024 volumes from the side fire radar and in-pavement system loops, as well as AADTs, seasonal variation in holiday patterns, hourly patterns. There was some comparison between the previous TOMP and this TOMP showing changes in commuter times, with people being remote more. So that was one of the things that we had to take into account. We looked at travel times using 2022 Bluetooth travel times, reliability measures, planning time index, travel time index, and congestion frequency, as well as average of hourly travel times. And then we looked at intersection level of service in the focus areas. So each focus area of the TOMP identifies key roads and controlling intersections, hourly volume and travel time trends throughout a typical week and typical summer week. You all know in Sussex County, we have to worry about the summer traffic as well. Projects and recommendations included in and are aimed at reducing delays and are sorted in 4 categories. We've got items that were completed. We've got items that are in progress, ones that are planned, and then additional recommendations. For the focus areas, we layer volumes collected from multiple sources. As I stated before, the side fire radar devices are wavetronics devices on limited access roads, in pavement signal system loops. Those are at signalized intersections. And then travel time data collected by our network of Bluetooth detectors, and then intersection turning movement counts. And layering all that together shows where travel demand is approaching, meeting or exceeding capacity, which road segments travelers experience delays on, and which intersections the relationship between demand and capacity may be causing delays. We selected 9 areas, 9 focus areas identified by the 2017 as congested areas for detailed analysis. And the 2 that we're going to look at today, actually, we're only going to look at 1 for recommendations tonight that affects this particular group. Focus area B is 1 and 16. And we noticed that was a focus area, but we didn't put a whole lot of effort into reviewing it because of the grade separated intersection that is in process or in progress. So once that is completed, then we will reassess that intersection. So for the Rehoboth area, just go back real quick, just so you guys can see that 5 points is indeed in the Rehoboth area. I know it's Lewes, I get it. I know, but it is what it is. So it's considered the Rehoboth area. So the first recommendation is Delaware 1 Transit Signal Priority Study from US 9 to Collins Avenue. And that's just recommending a study to look at possibilities of changing signal timing to coincide with the transit system. So that, if the lights can change at about the same time that it takes the buses to get from one intersection to the next. Just trying to make it so that things run a little bit more smoothly. The next recommendation is non-intrusive signal detection. So to install non-intrusive signal detection for improved vehicle and pedestrian detection. So it would give more reliable detection, continuous turning movement count data collection, and automated traffic signal performance measures. So it would be more included with the signals and not be in the road. Trying to get things to be non-intrusive. We're also looking at a Delaware 1 low stress bikeway study. I do believe that there was one already done, and we're looking to expand that. Our next steps, we have an email address for the TOP, and that's on our website. So it's actually for Del.Dot Intops. So if you have any questions about the TOP, you could go right there and submit the question. And right now there are 3 people that check that email box, but we're looking to add more people as we publish that information. We're going to be launching our GIS hub site that will be supporting the TOPs, and it will allow better access for everyone to be able to see what's involved. There we go. Just wanted to give you guys a really quick look at the new TOP hub site. It'll actually just go back. See the fun of a mouse. I saw it. There it is. So again, we're still in kind of the planning stages for this. See, this is what we're trying to get rid of. We're trying to get rid of the duplication of the menus. So that's why it's not truly live, but you can click on the link or go use the QR code and it'll take you to this. So you can kind of look through everything. But it gives you information about the topic, the methodology, our statewide improvements. And then there's a page for each county. So you can see what's going on for each county. Let me see if I put this one up here. It'll show. So, and again, it's kind of broken up within each county. So for the recommendations, we're just going to do this really quick because it does take a while to load it. But there are maps involved, there's scrolling, there's all kinds of fun stuff. But you can go specifically to the area that you wanted to look at and it'll jump to that section. And as I said,
Anyone have any questions for Beth? I saw you were itching to get that hand up.
So just describe the next steps. For instance, when you were with the study, the transit signal priority study, so you study it, it makes sense. It's a recommendation that you want to move forward. How does that look? How long until we could expect to see actual implementation?
I don't know, because at this point, that the recommendation is to do a study. So I can't say for certain, but as you see, the third point, and I jumped ahead with the GIS stuff. The last part is we're going to update the data and possible recommendations based on 2025 data. So starting in the end of January, beginning of February, we're going to start pulling the data from this year and see what changes we can make, what has changed between the data that we published and the recommendations that we published to see what additional things we can look to. And again, Todd, I thank you for pointing that out and keeping us going in that direction. And we're actually looking to continue to do this so that there isn't 6 or 7 years between terms. We want to try and make it so that there is a midterm data update, even if there isn't recommendation update, if there's a data update so that we can kind of keep that moving and provide the information for planners and engineers and developments and land use, all the things that kind of feed into this. We want to be able to provide out the data when we have it. Unfortunately, the way that things had been working, it was county by county. We are looking at options for that as well, so that it might be a statewide effort going forward with focus areas across the state, so that we're not just trying to find, okay, these 9 in Sussex County. Maybe there's 12 in Sussex County and only 2 in Kent County that we need to really be looking at. So it's an evolving process. We want to, with technology changing, with devices changing, we're trying to find better ways that we can get the information out to people in a more efficient pattern. Okay.
Hey, Glenn?
Glenn Marshall, Sussex County EMS.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember how you determine areas of congestion, what your formula is for that.
That's from traffic engineers that are higher than me. It has to do with the travel time or reliability, and to know where there are backups and congestion. We all know that in the summer, there's congestion along Route 1 almost everywhere, right? And one of the things that we're starting to realize is that everyone having Waze and Google Maps on their phone and in their car, there are now people that can find the back roads that the locals used to use to try and get around all of the traffic. So there are some roads that are experiencing higher traffic volumes than they were designed for. So we're looking at that to see if we can get better count numbers, if we can get better data for those secondary roads, so that we can try and make sure that we're looking at all of those possibilities. But a lot of it is kind of trying to hit a moving target on a map, because with all these devices, people are rerouting. And they're not going where you want them to go. They're going where they want to go.
And the locals need to create many expressways behind the outlets in the meantime.
And some of those were created for a long time, have been created for a long time.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm quite aware. I grew up in Red Mill Farms, so I'm well aware of all of those things.
The reason I
Yeah.
ask is because east and west isn't even highlighted there.
Well, east and west, the main reason that those weren't being looked at is because there is already, Route 24 had been being widened. And so while that was in process, we didn't want to try and pull data for that. So 24 is going to be one of the areas that we will look at in the update for the data. Route 9, there is already a study going on for Route 9. There is widening recommendations or possibilities for Route 9. So those areas, and if you look at the full top, those are addressed in there as to why there's core data in there. But it doesn't go into the focus areas because they're already being handled by other areas.
I didn't know that's why they were excluded. Thank you.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
just because of that, we do have, as you've heard, the coastal corridor study, which is in some way, I don't want to say picking up where this is, because it's slightly, west of here, but just as a reminder, we do have a series of 2 stakeholder engagement meetings that is open to you all, open to anyone. We've already had the first one. The second one is Wednesday. I couldn't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday. This Wednesday, we can get you information if you want the link. It's both virtual as well as there is a in-person presence up at DelDOT, but we would encourage you just to join virtually. And we are having a public workshop on December 2nd with a snow date of December 4th. So there is a lot of information, a lot of movement on that coastal corridor study. So we encourage you all to stay engaged with that. So with that, I'm going to move. I couldn't see you down there. Senator Huxley, yes.
Thank you. To kind of follow up on Todd's question, he asked like what happens after the recommendation?
Yeah.
Anticipating the recommendations are going to say certain things. How do we go from the recommendation to getting the study done? Like what check mark needs to be done? Who needs to say yes? How do we go from you're off and
I'll sit on the shoulder. And I mean, it depends. Sussex County is unique because there is no MDO. So in Newcastle and Kent counties, we can do the recommendations and kind of hand them off to the MPOs, and then they take them and kind of go from there. With this, it's kind of, okay, hand it to coastal corridors or to, the corridor preservation program. It's finding other ways. And if it's something that there isn't something already in place, then we as DelDOT planning would then take and do that study. So, we're not just saying, hey, we want to do this and somebody figure out who can do it. We are, actively engaged with the coastal corridor study and with other areas of planning.
Yeah, and just to follow up, because this is being reported for other people, sometimes I send a link to this. MPO stands for?
Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Okay, and they help coordinate.
Regional planning.
Yeah, thank you. I'm asking this question, not for myself, but for others who may be.
So you have like Will Mapco up in the, up in the Wilmington area, you have the Kent MPO, in Kent County. Sussex County is, from a population standpoint, is just missed out previously, but there's every indication that very soon Sussex County will meet the population numbers to be able to have their own MPO, which, would be very helpful for this area. In terms of those recommendations, or the studies that are being done, if, and Todd, this comes to your, question in Center Artsville, I mean, if and when that study is completed and there is a recommendation of some kind to move forward, it would need to start that process of getting recommended by the Council on Transportation and eventually get into the CTP. So it's not something that, happens overnight. If there's one thing we've learned through this process is from an idea to traffic cones on the ground can take some time. But this is where a lot of important things start, and hopefully coming to, we'll see some of these projects, on the ground here in the not too distant future. So, all right, I'm going to move us forward to cones on the ground. Brian Behrens is going to come up and give us a update on all the projects that we're seeing in this area from project development.
Thank you, Andrew. Nice to see you again. Those that don't know me, although I think I've worked with you at this point on something, some of these projects. Brian Behrens, I'm group engineer for Delaware Project Development South Section. And just to echo the comments said before, I would like to thank this group, current members, past members. We have a lot of very large and unusually complex capital projects in this area. And I've been coordinating and working with this working group since 2018. And, as the one directing a lot of the design of these projects, getting the input of this community and this working group, I think is going to just help deliver ultimately what we think are going to be, game changers for our area. And I think we'll end up with better projects. So I would like to echo those comments as well and say thank you. Moving into the projects, SR1 in Minus Conway started this summer, started in July. We are all over the place right now in construction. That was, by design. We wanted to allow, it's a large construction project. We wanted to allow for some concurrent phasing of the jobs. So the contractor is currently in phase 1 and phase 2 of the project, and that takes them all the way over from work at actual 5 points all the way to Red Mill Pond. They're currently at 5 points. All of that work is wrapping up. They're on the service road. Most of phase 2, for those that remember one of the meetings we held previously, most of phase 2 is all the off alignment work, the stuff that's west of Route 1, building the service road, and the work under the bridge. They're also on Nassau Road. That work is primarily to establish the outfall for the drainage for half of the construction that heads out Black Hawk Gut, ultimately to the Broad Kill. And then they're also working under the Nassau bridges. For those that have traveled on the trail, they're seeing where the trail is going to go. We're cutting into the embankment, and that work is, I'll show you some pictures of that as well. So these are just the detours that are currently in place, almost wrapping up. This is the first one where we had to shut Tulip Drive near the 5 Points entrance to work on the improvements there at 5 Points. We'll come back to that same detour later in the project during phase 6 when we have work near St. Jude. The other detour that kind of came up on us as we needed to shift some work at the beginning to establish that outfall is the closure of Nassau Road. Both of those should be wrapping up hopefully in the next week or so to lift those detours. There's a couple little things we were working on to kind of move that along, but we're near the end of both of those detours, so that's a good thing. This is just kind of that highlighted area of phase 1 and phase 2A, everything you see in blue, and then the work all the way down there at the bottom left, it's not in blue, but that's everything that's really under construction right now, actually. So it's a lot of the project, a lot of stuff that we're doing, not affecting most of Route 1 traffic, and it's a rather long phase. Also included in that is phase 2C. Notice we skipped 2B. 2B is the actual construction of the roundabout at Minus Conway. That requires a detour. We're doing the 2A and the 2C first. The 2B requires the detour of Minus Conway Road, which is going to take you out to Route 9 at the signal there. So that won't happen for a little while. They're going to build the off ramp there in that little small blue before we do that detour. Here are some pictures. These are about 2 weeks old. We just got some new ones today, so I apologize, but I thought I was going to be current. Sorry about that. But we have a good group that flies a drone out there, usually once a month, to kind of keep track of mostly ENS, erosion and sediment control, for our construction staff, but it's also helpful for me because I like to geek out on it and just see the progress from an aerial view. So I'm going to share some of that with you as well. This is right at 5 points looking north. So when we're done with this phase, we're going to let the U-turn happen from the innermost lane. If you're heading south on Route 1, you'll be able to make a U-turn instead of going through 5 points and having to use that at-grade loop. You'll now be able to make a U-turn in a passenger car. I don't think we're going to be able to get big trucks around there, but the passenger car is going to be able to make that U-turn, which would be a good thing. Once we close on the crossing, we'll get a little bit around. This is also looking north. So Lewes Senior Center is there on the left. And that is where the new service road will be, all that dirt moving around on the left. You can also see, as I'm sure all of you have noticed, traveling up and down the corridor, the large stormwater management pond is on the right side of Route 1 there. That is where most of the drainage is going for this project. This is the work underneath of the Nassau Bridge. So you see the Lewes to Georgetown Trail there going kind of up and down. You can see the piers on the right. The trail is going to be moved to the right of that. So currently it's obviously right where the railroad used to be. And you can kind of see all the structural work is going in, almost complete. And then we have some decorative kind of concrete panels that we coordinated with Mary on that are kind of have like a seagrass kind of aesthetic that would be very nice once it's in. And that is moving right along. And then this is the same view as 2 slides ago, but now looking south. So just here off to the right, that is that service road approaching the Lewes Senior Center and the new roundabout that will be there. And that is, you know, 2-way service road. So there's a lot of other work that's going on, but this kind of shows you just the big picture, you know, just the magnitude of the project, and they're doing a ton of work out there. Okay. Realignment of Old Orchard Road. So this one has been kind of long anticipated, been in design, been in my group for a long time. We had a long right-of-way acquisition phase with this project, and then another very long utility relocation phase, which is almost done. Still a little bit going on right there. But that we have awarded the road construction contract to ADEL. That is the same contractor that is working on 116. And they actually technically just started last Monday on November the 3rd. They plan to follow our phasing of the project, which has them doing mostly the off alignment work as well. The same kind of idea we did on Minus Conway, building the off alignment work first, and then moving into the other phases. So there's not much of a comprehensive update with this one beyond just saying we've awarded the contract. We're going to see construction really starting to get moving this month. That's a good project and as well. US 9 widening. So this project is in design. We've progressed it to the point where we are almost ready to say we have final right-of-way plans where we know the amount of right-of-way we need to acquire. We need to do a little bit more of environmental studies in order to wrap up the NEPA phase, which is needed in order to actually make offers and acquire that right-of-way. So we plan to start the acquisitions in 2026. This is the concept for the project. This is the same that has been shown previously. This is what we took out to a public workshop last year. It is 4 lanes along US 9, starting just west of Old Vine, and then carrying into SR1 with center turn lanes as well. Moving from west to east along the corridor. It does have shared use path and sidewalks and bike lanes also throughout the project. It will tie in to the Plantation Road Phase 1 project that was completed about a year ago, a little longer than a year ago, and is in use now. And then Plantation Road Phase 2 is the other big one in this area that is almost on the similar timeline as the US 9 widening. So this project is just got to semi-final design, which is a major design milestone for my group. And we are also close to finalizing the right of way as well. This one is planned to begin that phase in FY27. We had a public workshop in April on this project, was well attended, got some good feedback. And that's the update. I'm going to do kind of similar that we did on US 9. The slides here going from, that's SR 24 on the left there, going up and down. That's where it begins. It'll tie into improvements made there a few years ago now, and then heading north along Plantation Road. It is one lane in each direction, turn lanes, kind of operational improvements, we like to call that, but it does have shared use paths and sidewalks and drainage improvements included as well. And then once we get past Cedar Grove here, we are proposing a roundabout at the entrance to the plantations. Single lane roundabout. This is an interesting decision for the project team. This is one of the first times where we consciously made the decision to choose safety over capacity. Not that it's always, one or the other. We like to get both, but we know we're going to have some capacity, queuing in doing this method, but it's a safer alternative. It's a safer choice for not just the cars, but also the pedestrians. And it has come with a lot of coordination to this point with both sides of the plantations community there. Brian, what was the alternative? Signal.
Is there alternatives to incorporate additional lanes, at least for a period of time?
Yeah, so we looked at signal, we looked at no signal, and we looked at, the issue really became the distance of the crossing when you put additional lanes in, not to mention the fact that the plantations west community with the silo there was very passionate about keeping that there. A lot of the, once we start to go elbows out and push out the infrastructure, everything else goes with it, including utilities and drainage and everything. And we were gonna impact that silo to the point where it couldn't be saved. So it's an overall solution, a context sensitive solution, if you will, knowing some of the negatives that are gonna come with it. But we feel good about the decision. And we are also proposing a roundabout at Robinsonville. So this one does have some additional lane to carry a lot of that. The first phase of Plantation Road was to kind of help flush out the 5 points intersection, carrying 2 lanes south. That will continue those 2 lanes that are there now through this roundabout, and then pitch down to 1 lane south of Robinsonville. And that is all I have.
Any more questions for Brian?
You go back to the very first, Mike Tyler, the Delaware Bicycle Council. I'm just not, the first illustration we show where it says the realignment of Old Orchard Road.
Sure.
So where is, where they took the tree down, that island that was there?
Yes, so the tree would be, and I know the people online can't see this, but it was right there. Right in front of Walgreens. So to get your bearings here,
Okay,
Route 1 is just to the top left corner of where the north arrow is. Marsh and Clay are where the roundabout will go. The intersection of Marsh and Clay.
so where was the road when it came out that didn't line up with that?
Correct. So existing, it's a realignment of Old Orchard Road. So existing Old Orchard Road comes out just opposite of the car wash on Savannah. So that is right here. This is existing Old Orchard Road. It's
Okay,
probably hard to see, but the light green shade there is the pavement removal, if you will. And it will realign Old Orchard. So if you're traveling on Old Orchard from New Road, and you get through Parker Run there with the entrances to the villages, immediately after that, you will go kind of left into the field.
yeah,
And
I
it will line up with West Coast.
remember is there a man who works, his name is Brockenbrough?
Yeah, so he's retired for a few years, but yes.
Mabel Granke and I went to him 20 years ago and asked him about realigning this road.
Yeah,
And it's
so,
taken 20 years to get this done.
yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the space for that realignment was preserved or dedicated or was to be dedicated by the villages, I want to say, but there was a sunset on that. We did miss that.
I'll have to
Just
call Mabel.
for whatever
She's
reason.
101 now, but she's in a real, yeah, we visited her recently. She'll be happy to hear that.
Good
Thank
project.
Maybe she can be the first one to drive it.
That's.
See someone to drive her.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Brian? Whenever we have our, historically our annual 5 points meetings, Brian is always the most popular person at our 5 Points workshops. He routinely gets a big crowd over there. All right. So one of the, as we worked our way through phase 2 of this process, we always wanted to provide different types of updates to educate, to better inform people of all the different things that kind of are happening at DelDOT or things that are, really contributing to trying to improve the transportation system. Obviously, with Tom, we thought that was a timely presentation. We always like to get the updates from Brian, but our one true North Star has always been our implementation plan updates. We started, as Shantae said, with 78 recommendations, and we have just been diligent in working our way through that, providing updates on, what's done, what's in progress, what do we still have to do. So we always turn to Leah to provide that update.
Thank you, Andrew.
That was the time.
Good to see you all. I don't know, I have mixed emotions tonight. Obviously, it's been, I'm sure you will all look forward to not hearing me giving you this presentation again, but, so here we are. We're gonna start from the overview of our 478 recommendations. And I think, actually, out of curiosity, how many of the members here tonight were here at the beginning of 2017, 2018? DJ, Bob Fisher, Mrs. Fisher, all right. So we've had a lot of and I thanks to all of you, of course. But those of you who were here when all of these were figured out and categorized, decided on 5 kind of areas. The gray area is to be implemented under current DelDOT programs and projects and initiatives. Blue is more about policies and procedures, about sustainability, beautification. Green, making the most of existing roadway infrastructure. Red is kind of our multimodal category, doing more for people walking, biking, and taking transit, making that a viable alternative. And yellow was really looking at those big picture, big project ideas, some of which, as Brian has shared, we've started tackling. So looking at all of those by status, when we met last April, we were at 74 of those 78 recommendations being in progress. So DelDOT is actively working on them. Ongoing, which means it's kind of something that's going to happen in perpetuity. It's a changed way of doing business, or totally completed. So we are now up another 2 to 76 and 78. So we'll walk through which of those tonight. So we're in pretty good shape and really impressive. I don't think it's often that planning studies like this are tracked so thoroughly and such good progress is made. I'd say for other communities I've worked in, this is quite impressive. So one big recommendation, those of you around the table should have had 3 handouts sitting in front of you about crossovers, and for those members of the public, there are handouts at the door if you missed it. Speaking to some unsignalized crossover changes along Route 1. Now, when you all came up with this suggestion, study the feasibility of eliminating unsignalized crossovers, the thought was really between 5 Points south to 24. And I think in subsequent conversations, we all agree, a lot of those unsignalized crossovers have a lot of utility. They allow communities to move back and forth without getting hung up with some of the major lights like at 9. But we did want to share, there have been some movement on looking at the crossovers north of 5 Points. So you'll see here, we're going to walk through a couple of them. The flyers really get into the details. So the locations we're looking at tonight specifically are Hudson Road Steamboat Landing, 60 angle crashes since 2012. So angle, it's what it sounds like, right? It's glancing blows. It's not T-bones, it's not rear end crashes, it's angle crashes, which we know are associated with folks trying to navigate that crossover and getting struck by northbound or southbound vehicles. So the goal for all of these is to reduce the conflict points that are out there. And a lot of the changes too are in line with a lot of the bigger projects Brian's team is working on, so they're kind of supportive. And I'm sure many of you driving corridor have noticed these are already in place. So you'll note on the handout there, we're asking a lot more traffic to kind of make a right onto 1, continue south to make that crossover at a U-turn location instead of directly across. And I think those of you who have made some of these maneuvers, I know Hudson Road is always anxiety inducing for me. I kind of got to white knuckle it, make sure folks aren't driving 90 coming south barreling ahead of you to get through. So instead of making those maneuvers, again, slight detour south to make a U-turn and make a safer maneuver. You'll note that some of them remain open for emergency vehicles. So Glenn, I'm sure that's a good news for you all to have that opportunity to still circulate freely. And you'll note on those flyers specific guidance intersection by intersection as to how to navigate the space via these diagrams, which may be comprehensible to some and not others. I know sometimes these things are a little hard to read, but you'll note the red arrow notes if the movement is now prohibited, and the green arrow notes which movements are still allowed. So obviously, when you're out there, everything is marked with standard road signage that you all are used to using, but it will take an adjustment period. So just wanted to make sure y'all were aware of that. Continuing on to some other changes in status. Recommendation D2, so we're moving into our multimodal category, was study the feasibility of potential connections for walking and bicycling between existing neighborhoods along streets and 2 trails. We're changing the status of this one from longer term to ongoing. So I think many of you have heard me talk many times about the Lewes bike plan, the SR1 low stress bikeway study, and all of those both of those planning studies are complete. And we also spent a lot of time talking about the pedestrian bridge assessment. Those have been wrapped up and documented. Last meeting, I think we also shared the county adopted ordinance 3061, which requires developers who are coming in to really look at cross-parcel connectivity, especially between commercial parcels, to see if we can have some of those interconnections. You know, there's instances where if you park your car and you're going to the business next door, it makes a lot of sense to be able to walk next door, and or if you live in a neighborhood that's right behind a business, to have to drive out and all the way around and get stuck in traffic. It is detrimental to traffic for all of us. So a lot of those things are already documented, but really it's ongoing because every time a development proposal comes in, it's going to be looked at. Every time Brian's team is exploring a new capital project, we're going to look for those opportunities to make those connections. Brian mentioned his projects are building in our pathway network, more bike lanes, more sidewalks. So this is really, you know, the department's doing great in this area with these investments. The trail networks as well, Georgetown Lewes Trail, all of that, building off of that success and making sure safe connections exist for folks. So moving forward, I know that's a priority in keeping with the safe system approach. Similarly, recommendation to D3 is really looking at better design guidance for keeping people and bikes and all of the other mobility devices we're seeing now, with stand-up scooters, electric skateboards, all sorts of new things are emerging on our roads, making sure those users are separate from highway traffic. So DelDOT has finalized the Complete Streets Design Guide in spring of 25 that is posted. That also was a little bit delayed with the posting due to the accessibility requirements Beth alluded to earlier. And again, DelDOT is on an ongoing basis really is coordinating with everyone. I know one great example is the Kings Highway project, whereby working both with the city of Lewes and Bloom, Lewes Historic Byways, there's conversation, you know, it's not just going to be grass that gets mowed. There's extensive collaboration and conversation with local stakeholders around beautification treatments. Now, many of you also know, DelDOT's not in the business of maintaining flower beds, so it does require an agreement with those local partners to ensure those things get done, but that is a process the department's engaging with.
Right?
Glenn Marshall, Sussex County EMS. So moving forward
Yes,
with the bike and pedestrian space,
yes.
is there going to be a clear delineation on what's authorized and what's not? With all the different motorized.
That's a great question. And I'm sure, so we're talking about which types of what we're, you know, riding a normal bike versus an e-bike versus a moped versus an electric scooter. Yes, so.
Versus a motorized.
Versus the motorized. So I know there's a very active conversation around this going on right now with the Delaware Bicycle Council. Recently asking the department to take this up. I think one of the big problems is this proliferation of some of these devices on Amazon. You can go on and pretty affordably have, you know, a teenager can have something shipped to their house that has a pretty high speed limit. So I think it is a complicated issue to address because, you know I don't read the state code before I walk out my front door and get on my new electric bike. But it is something that is an active conversation. I think there's a lot of consensus around a speed limit on our trail system, similar to what we have on roads. Are you still going to have speeders and reckless riders, the same way we have speeders and reckless drivers? Of course, I think it is an education and enforcement issue. I know the DBC came out with the same consensus, but yes, there is an acknowledgement statewide. I think that there needs to be a little bit more done there. And obviously, given the nature of our trail network, which spans, it's not like the city of Lewes can tackle it because these systems span the entire state. I don't know, Austin and Stephanie, if you want to add anything. I know you all take it very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we, to your point, just last month at the Delaware Bike Council meeting, we talked about some recommendations from the council for different types of signage. We are discussing it internally at DEDOT. I truly believe that education and awareness for young people is really important. There's conversation about still like designating trails that are not for, that signage should be placed that says no mopeds, but mopeds don't look like mopeds, like what I thought, what I think of a moped growing up and now. Because of the different classifications of the engines and things like that, what looks like an e-bike could really be a moped. And so we're trying to work through what would be the most effective ways in which to communicate and ensure a level of safety on those trails.
I'm sure, I hesitate to ask, because I know the emergency room visits for especially some of these scooters and devices are sky high. The real safety problem.
The majority of them is speed related.
Yes.
And whether it's road bike versus road bike, bike versus pedestrian. And there are more and more events, marathons, 5Ks, walks that are being done on these trails. And they do not have the ability to shut those trails down. So you've got, we'll say December 6th is the Rehoboth Beach Marathon, 3,000 runners on it, and they have no way to control or prevent bikes, e-bikes, any of that coming into that crowd. So, I mean, as this evolves, it's not only evolving for the regular, but I mean, you're having large scale events there.
And I'm sure emergency response is a challenge too, when you're in the middle of two street crossings.
So we always have bikes and UTVs out there, staged, but we try to pre-deploy them because of the volume of the people going to be on there.
Mike?
Mike Tyler, Delaware Bicycle Council. Yeah, we discussed this too. And I was the only voter against the signs for speed limits because there's no enforcement. It doesn't matter. If you're a teenage kid on an e-bike, you're not going to care about a sign. That doesn't mean anything to you because nobody's going to do anything. I was a park watch guy, and I've stopped some people when I was doing park watch, and I had no enforcement. However, I could call the county constable, and he came and took care of a couple of guys that were doing something wrong, but it's few and far between. And, I won't even ride trail in the summertime. It's too congested. None of the guys I rode with ride in the summertime. They ride at night in the winter.
I wasn't going to mention this, but going back to the beginning, since I was there at the beginning, I don't think I've missed the meeting. I brought up the topic of law enforcement necessity for the trails. And there really wasn't a lot of interest. I mean, like DSP would say, not my job. So I would offer again, that as these wonderfully successful bike paths are being protected and become safer, they will become more popular. And if you don't have law enforcement on there, they're going to be a really juicy target for a terrorist someday when they have 3,000 people on them at an event. So I hope it's somebody's job in Delaware government. It doesn't necessarily be DelDOT, but I know that Shantae is very influential with the other departments, particularly the DSP. So maybe she can convince them to look at the law enforcement at some point in time before it happens. Thank you.
Mary?
And Andrew, I know you want Mary Rock. Andrew, I know you want to move on, so I'm not gonna belabor the subject. Excuse me. I guess I just want to throw out that I appreciate that this is one of the recommendations and that DelDOT is looking into this. But it's really a much larger collaborative conversation because as we all know, the trails throughout the state are owned and managed by any number of entities, from municipalities to state agencies to cities to whatever. And so I really do hope that whether it's the conversation starts at the Bike Council and DelDOT considers, its recommendations. I really do hope that it's a larger, broader collaborative conversation so that when recommendations are made, they can be made for a broader audience.
Thank you for that. I will say, a couple, 2 months ago, Delaware had, DelDOT hosted a safety summit. And I know Shantae spoke to the safe system approach. We always have the safety wheel at the beginning. And you'll note one of the principles on that is post-crash care. One of the principles is safer speed, safer devices, all of that. And we did have a healthy contingent from Delaware State Police at that event, more robust than in previous years. And conversations are happening now that were not happening previously across sectors. So between DelDOT, state police, local police, as well as local municipalities. And I do see movement and change in doing business happening at that level. Also heard a couple of our colleagues in state police say that, historically it's like, oh, why are you wasting your time and money on petty traffic offenses or jaywalking or whatever it may be? And there is a changing perspective in the value of enforcing some of that and it being worth money because it's lives, right? Lives have an expensive dollar amount. And, I know that that is an active dialogue and there is some changes in approach for all of that. So just to know from a systems approach statewide, some of those conversations are happening. Thank you all for your feedback on that one. Bike parking, a little less exciting, although important. This one is also kind of ongoing. I know Lewes, City Lewes has done a great job with bike parking availability and increasing advertisement of that. I know the county, when they do development coordination reviews, does suggest bike parking for commercial projects. And also, as DelDOT moves forward with capital investments in the trail network, there are nodes with kind of trailhead signage and bike parking is always baked into that. So again, this one also we're calling ongoing as projects come down the pike. Those sorts of amenities are included in the project process, both DelDOT, DENREC, and private side. For the pedestrian bridge feasibility, we are calling this one complete. I think you've heard me speak on this multiple times at this point. We heard from Shantae earlier, the funding kind of changes right now, both locally at the state level and at the federal level with a lot of unknowns. If you recall, we talked about a candidate location right by Marsh and Shady Road, kind of close to the Lewes Park and Ride being a location we think a pedestrian bridge is feasible and would have the benefit of connecting transit users and a lot of the hotels and restaurants right in that area with a crossing, since we definitely know we're not getting an accurate crosswalk at the 5 Points intersection, or would that ever be appropriate in a million years. So that location, and then further south of here down near the Rehoboth Park and Ride as well. Now, we documented that. Department agrees it's a great idea, but something like that traditionally would be a grant application. And right now we have a lot of uncertainty around what the grant landscape is going to look like in the next few years, but it's documented, it's there. And there's kind of, again, Shantae talked about getting things ready to go after, whether it's moving projects into construction, but also the handoff package there is enough materials for maybe Austin or his colleagues in the future to submit for a grant. So, moving on, okay, D9, connections from Lewes Transit Center. That bridge is potentially one. There's also a CTP project coming up on Shady Road, if I recall. It's in pretty far out still, but we did look at and document connectivity there. And really the moral of the story with that low stress bikeway study and a lot of things is have a side path, put a side path in when there's space. All of our roads are pretty much at the speed and volume level, especially right off one, that we want those bikes to have a separate place to travel. So picking up on a theme here. And similarly, recommendation E12, find some spaces where we can recommend for some trails. Again, that study documented those. And ongoing basis, that's also being accomplished via the development process. So a lot of good stuff there. Any other questions about the multimodal piece before I move on from this category? So that moves us to category E, our big, larger projects. E5 recommendation of the east-west traffic as a system, specifically listing Miners Conway, New Road, Old Orchard Road, and Clay Roads. We heard from Brian tonight about a number of projects in the works that are improving those systems. And we know a lot of those projects will also have pretty big impacts on how cars move across Route 1 through the project area, through the 5 Points intersection. So we are, I think last summer, I reported on our first round of traffic counts for this area. So we're going to call this one, it's moving forward in progress in coordination with the really, 5 Point study, right? This is the recommendation. That is the big one, which is the feasibility of a grade separation at 5 Points itself. So that also classified as in progress. And as we've talked about the past couple times we've met, every summer we're doing traffic counts, but it is very hard to understand exactly how all of these improvements are going to impact traffic flow and bump to a max. So our intersection there is in the middle. Plantation Road Phase 1 is done now. We know cars are traveling differently. I don't know if you are all traveling differently around that area now. Blue shows the Minus Conway improvements, and purple showed the Old Orchard Road improvements. So as all of these things come online over time, we're doing counts because we know people are going to change their travel patterns and behaviors in response to this. Unfortunately, what that means is we can't really understand how the 5 Points intersection is working until all of these projects are done and we see how cars are flying around, especially Minus Conway, because that's a new way to go east-west across one. So just documenting for the record here as we go our separate ways from these meetings, the department has allocated funds to continue to conduct counts every summer. And then in the fall, we do a little analysis of the impacts there with the goal of hitting the ground running as construction wraps up and we have the data we feel like we need to formally begin that feasibility study.
Scott Collins, planning and zoning.
Yeah, Scott.
Question, if you were to do a grade separated intersection at 5 Points, would that actually incorporate the project to also build out a path across Route 1 for pedestrians and bicyclists, not a separate bridge?
Potentially, yeah, I think, because a grade separation is a bridge of sorts, right?
Yeah,
It's
without
switching where circulation is, but yes, any project DelDOT does now, and Brian can speak to this, all the grade separated intersections do incorporate usually a shared use path to allow connectivity. Brian, I don't know if you want to add that.
Probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Hey, Brian, do you mind standing up just
Oh, yeah.
so we can get our people online to hear?
Yep, so around 6, 7 years ago, maybe longer, maybe shorter, but I want to say we had a kind of a directive saying any of these newer GSIs that we have in design, make sure we're having a separated path for, non-motorized spaces, like bicycles, various streets.
I think the challenge, Scott, is the proximity of the 5 Points intersection to where the other locations are and make sure it, because are you gonna walk all the way up to 5 Points to walk, back down or something like that, so.
If you want to avoid being hit by a car,
I know.
probably.
But it may not be an or, it may be an and, it could be both.
Possibly.
Yeah, so we have the closest crosswalk, so you have two opportunities right now. It's at the Georgetown Lewes Trail under the Nassau Bridge, or you have to go all the way south to Dartmouth Drive. That's the only place there's an accurate crossing where you can cross, and that's 1.5 mile, I forget, but it's quite a ways, especially if you're on foot. On bike, it's a little more doable, but no, it's a great question, Scott.
Thanks.
Yes, DJ?
DJ Hughes, for the traffic data collection, the data that's being collected just service volumes?
Yes, actually, we have a couple slides on this, and I know you provided some feedback last year. So if I may, and then we'll come back, because I know you're a traffic engineer, and I'm just a planner, so we may have to take some of the questions back to our traffic engineers. But essentially, we're doing those annual counts, and then we're looking at the percent changes relative to 21 and 2023. So we're looking at mornings, evenings, and summer Saturday peaks. we're looking at total intersection volume. So how many cars are moving through the 5 Points intersection? Really to understand whether vehicles are diverted. Are they picking other routes to get through and around the area? We're looking at through volume, through Route 1. So that's just total volume of cars moving through Route 1 over the entire month, and also intersection delay and level of service. So, you know, have those projects impacted operations? So a lot of detail here as to how this is calculated, just for the record. I'm not going to get into specifics. I think most of you in the room understand level of service and free flowing traffic jam, and unfortunately, no, the 5 Points intersection is on the wrong end of that scale. And obviously, when you have a measure just for the intersection, that doesn't mean every approach to the intersection is, you know, a D or an E. It may vary. And I know a movement we often hear is the problem is northbound turning left onto 9. This gets really hung up a little bit more than some of the other movements. So we're looking at that in general. And obviously, a lot of the data Beth talked about is factoring in too. So we're doing targeted counts here. We can see what we picked up on. I'm going to flip ahead to I know you all have a slide in front of you, flip ahead to the conclusions page. So right now we're seeing some things worsening and some improving. Intersection volume is increasing during the week and decreasing on Saturday right now. But similar total volumes to last year. This is slide 81. Those of you looking at through volume, volumes were higher in 2025 than recent years, and that was also observed along the corridor. So we're also comparing north and south, what's going on out here. And we had some interesting changes, and who knows if they're significant, you know, gonna track. That's the benefit of year over year looking at this, is delay decreasing in the morning and increasing on Saturdays, which is interesting when the through volumes were different, right? And also the signals were retimed this June. So that also changes things, right? Delta flips a switch and that changes a lot of these measures. So again, that probably didn't answer the very specifics you're interested in, but that's what we're up to.
No, so what I'm talking about is basically you have two type of counts, especially in congestion conditions. You have service volume counts, which is the cars crossing the stop line.
Mhm.
But every year, those are pretty much gonna be similar because the signal times are similar. But what you really need to count is the demand that is however far back, when you have to sit multiple cycles through the signal.
Mhm.
You need, and the end of the queue is always changing, so it's a difficult thing to do. And it's very tough to do, but you need to be counting the cars that are trying to get to the signal that are not getting there. And then also within that backup, all the cars from the side streets that can't get there. That's your true volume, not what's actually crossing the stop line. So is that, and you might not know.
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay.
I can talk, and I think there's also effort to look at some of the other measures, travel time reliability and some of that to see if that helps stitch together a picture. I also know we have a couple cameras right in the area as well. So I will ask, get an answer to you.
Because what happens.
I hear you.
And I don't want to get too technical, but the software basically also needs to be calibrated. Because if you just enter the data in, you know, not everybody drives the same in every single state, every single location, and the software, for example, Kings Highway, I spent hours trying to get it to replicate what we're seeing. And if you don't do that, then you end up getting results that are not reflective of what you're seeing in the field. So it's not an easy thing to do, but as far as data collection with drones, that might be the most efficient way to try to maybe help at least get the back of the queue where that is, because they're constantly changing things as well.
Yeah, it's a really great idea.
Real quick, Bob Fisher, it's my recollection that, and we live right off of Minus Conway and go up there to 1, that before COVID, it was common that SR1 southbound in the summertime especially was backed up past us north. Now, since COVID and the 5 years that have passed, it seems to have gotten a lot better. And like this past summer, I don't remember us not being able to get on one southbound and go, you know, at least where somewhere farther south, like to St. Jude Apostle, which is where we go mostly from there.
Yeah.
So it seems to me, now I know 9, and especially coming out on 9, on both sides of 1, have gotten a lot worse, because we try to go that way and it's sometimes impossible. So is that, are you saying that the one is the one throughput, which is very important for getting onward.
Mhm.
That seems to have gotten better, but cross traffic may be worse. Am I wrong on that?
So again, these are aggregating numbers
Okay.
for the intersection as a whole. We have that on the back end.
That's okay. You see my point.
Yeah, and
Because
obviously.
That's important since you've got traffic now coming with no stoplights all the way south to Rehoboth Beach.
Yep.
From Christiana, so you want to keep that going. Right? Okay.
Yeah, but the east-west movement is also really important, which is why that E5 recommendation is in there too. So obviously, all important, but at a certain point, you're gonna hit the light. Right now, the light's at 5 points, even if that were grade separated, we're gonna hit traffic signals on one because the context of the road is changing. So.
Okay.
Next up, we're going to continue this work, and I hope that despite the fact that we are not going to be meeting anymore, you all trust that the department will continue advancing this work, and the county, of course. We'll continue that monitoring and analysis. We will still be releasing an annual report for 2025, so that will not be presented to you as it has in the past at this meeting, but we will be sure, obviously, have all of your contact information. We'll be sure to distribute that to you for your review. And kind of documenting where we've left things off in this transition, we're saying from phase 2 to phase 3. And we also have, following 5 points still, we're also going to have a new newsletter associated with the Coastal Corridors study called the Coastal Corridors Connection. So both of those are a resource right now. In the future, we may be merging them. We're still working out how that goes. But for those of you who do subscribe to following 5 points, rest assured you will be notified and given the opportunity to kind of transition over to Coastal. And that is my cue for a plug to get involved with the Coastal Corridor study. So I think the past couple of meetings, we have been hearing a lot from you all about Route 9, east-west movements, obviously 5 points itself being kind of the eastern terminus of Route 9. And we actually, Glenn, I was curious to hear your comment about 24 and other congestion. Have been doing a meeting one last week, was posted online, the video, the recording, and we saw a lot of capacity issues along 24 now, and if we look ahead to 2050. So a great map series of that you may want to take a look at and review the reporting. And our meeting this coming Wednesday will be building off of kind of current conditions and what we expect 2050 to be like, assuming all the improvements DelDOT's doing with these capital projects we heard about tonight, but also looking at potential other ways to help improve circulation east-west. So we have some potential mitigation concepts. So we've talked about widenings on 24 and 9. We've also are talking about some new potential regional connectors. So kind of how do we strengthen other parts of the network that are east-west routes to improve flow, and so we're not hung up. So we'll be getting into a lot of that on Wednesday. It is an afternoon meeting, and then coming to the general public on December 2nd, as Andrew said, with a workshop from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. All of this, of course, will be posted online, same as these meetings. So if you can't be there in person, there will be a recording with the goal of putting a lot out.
And I'll also add to that too, we will still obviously update our websites with the project information, the annual report, things like that, social media, when we, kick off new projects, project updates, things like that. So there will be many different ways we will still receive information on projects happening in the area, outputs of the study, things like that.
Any questions about this effort or other?
So backing up a little bit, the crossovers that are being used for U-turns, has queuing been evaluated or any of those left turn lanes being increased to accommodate additional U-turns that they're going to receive?
We would have to ask traffic. I know they did an extensive analysis before they implemented any of their changes.
Because I was talking with a resident on the way here, it was off People's Crest Road, and he was concerned about the queuing and crossovers.
Okay. We can get back to that. Back to you on that. So you're before queuing pre or post change?
Post change, just because right now where you had a lot of cross movements, which I understand why they're being prevented, especially with a southbound signal going at 16. When they go to make those U-turns, the left turn lane, you have the queuing and you have to be able to slow down to get into that left turn. His specific concern was if you have cars in that left turn lane, that people are slowing down in the fast lane on Route 1. And then that's gonna be a safety issue.
Thank you for clarifying that question. Yeah, we'll pass that on to our colleagues in traffic.
All right. Got following 5 points in coastal quarters connection. If you all need help naming a newsletter that you have, we're good. Those are some catchy names there. I don't see any, comments from anyone online. Any member of our public here that would like to make a, comment?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, though, just standing up and showing your name.
So on Route
What's your name?
Lewes.
Okay,
So on Route 9 east, headed towards the beach, almost impossible to make a left-hand turn because the traffic coming from Route 1, the light at the high school is sensed, has a sensor on it. So it doesn't go on and on the weekend. During the week, if there's camps there in the summer, people are coming in and out. But that light is, it's green all weekend long. So you have to make a right and go up to that light, go into the high school and do a UV and then come back out. Is there any reason why on weekends in the summer, that light couldn't be a functional light? Anyone?
I think we can look into that. We don't have any response, but we can look into
I
that.
mean, only, like I said, during the week, there's camps.
We're talking about right out here. Which light?
So the light at the high school, the lighting way
Yeah.
and Route 9.
Okay.
So what,
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Yesterday, we're 9 business, yeah.
Right.
after the meeting, can we get your contact information and
Sure.
that follow up?
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public have any comment?
I've been retired.
Okay. So just a reminder of the different website information, that 5points.del.gov. That's kind of where all the historical information at this point, we have a lot of historical information. And if you're looking for more information that's more of the timely information going on now, you can go to also, I'm confusing myself, del.gov, that's the archive, still using the public input site.
Yes, that's the second paragraph.
Right. So then you got the 5-point transportation study on what's planned Delaware will be used for all of our current study materials. So use that to look at our recordings of this meeting or anything else. Just for me wrapping up, thanks to all of you. It's been a great process. I was thinking about it. We went from Josh Thomas to Jen Sinelli to Austin Gray in terms of kind of people leading this. We went from Drew Boyce, we had Marco in there, Pam Steinbach and Stephanie Johnson in terms of the planning directors. Jeff Rigner, if you remember Jeff with WRA, to Leah Casanda. We've had a lot of great people involved in this that has really led to a successful endeavor. My parting words will be that I think the most important thing out of all this has been the process that's been created. I think when we started this, forgetting about the millions of dollars that's been invested in this area and the things that are still coming online, I think, on equal footing on that is the relationships, the trust, the credibility that's been built up between the community, between the county, between the state, the conversations, the communications that are going on, the public that has seen and been able to engage and understand that we may not agree on everything, we may not be able to do everything, but we are here to listen. We are doing the best we can, and we are always trying to put forth, a very trustworthy, very credible effort. And so that is what will continue, regardless of whether this group meets or not on a regular basis. And we're certainly looking forward to engaging with you all in different ways. So on behalf of everyone who's been a part of this, and I know I've been a part since day one, we really thank you for building that process and building all of that credibility in a state and county process. So thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the minutes from last meeting, and Leah was gonna get a hold of me, or connect with me about bicycles turning on.
Thank you for that.
And then the other one is actually, it's incorrect. I was concerned about northbound Route 1 traffic turning left onto Route 9. I'm sorry I didn't read that. I just didn't get to that. It should be northbound. But I would like to talk to you about that, to put it maybe a safety box or something in there for cyclists. There are things you can put on the road, paint them green, make them the right width. Because a lot of times when I was biking out of Lewes, that's what we always did. We would turn and go down you know, what's the road? We didn't, there was before the circle, Beaver Dam Road. No, I can't get to Beaver Dam Road now out of Lewes. I mean, I can if I want to get run over.
Don't want that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll follow up and editorial correction to the minutes. I assume everyone is okay with the change in road. Excuse me. By the way,
All right, with that, thank you to everyone who joined us online, and we are concluded with this meeting. Oh, wait, one last thing, we will be turning around the meeting minutes from this meeting relatively quickly, sending it out via email and looking for any edits or anything, and we will seek approval via email from working group members. Thanks, everyone.